is to add selected synthetic yeast inside the vat to get the fermentation going a bit quicker and to make it easier to control, because yeast only function at a certain temperature. If you know the type of yeast, you know the temperature, and it's the same for all your vats. So you program it into your computer, and it does all the work for you. And adding yeast will also make the fermentation quite a bit quicker. It will last only 1 week with added yeast. Now, having said that, that's not what we do here. You know when you buy your grapes in the supermarket, you have a sort of dust on top? Well, that's mostly yeast, and that's what we can reuse. So it means it takes a bit more work to get the fermentation going, because we have to play around with the temperature, and we have to do it for each vat individually. Because from one plot in the vineyard to the other, you have slightly different types of yeast, so different temperatures once they're in. It's actually going to be a good thing. Because when the yeast inside is working, they breathe and produce carbon dioxide, which creates little bubbles, like those you have in champagne, for example. And that is how the skins and the seeds will rise to the top and form what we call the cap. And the cap is really important, because that's where you find colour, tannins, and aromas. So everything which is important in the wine. So to extract all of this and find it in the liquid, we do something called pumping over, where you put a pipe here, and with a pump, send the liquid back up to the top, and it goes through the cap. It's a bit like filter coffee, same principle. So quite simply, we have a certain quantity of nutrients to extract from the cap. If you have 1 week to do it, you have to be quite fast. You have to do 3-4 pumping overs every day. When you have 4 weeks to do it, you can be a lot more gentle. So here we never do more than half the volume of a vat in 1 day, and usually in 2 or even 3 years. So really trying to be very gentle. Once the fermentation is over, we get to the stage of running off, where you put a pipe here, the wine flows into another vat, the cap falls to the bottom. Someone goes inside with a spade to scoop all of the cap out through this hole. Not a fun job to do, because the cap is actually really heavy, really compact, because it's full of liquid, but that's what makes it so interesting. So when the cap has come out, we send it to the press to squeeze out any of the liquid that was left inside, and that's how we get press wine, which is very tannic, very concentrated, not so good on its own, but when you blend it with the rest, it's really going to bring body and complexity to the wine, so we always use a little bit.
Is this the press?
This is the press, yeah, exactly. So you have like a balloon inside that will inflate, and that's how you squeeze the cap against the sides. So here we have some concrete vats, quite a bit more recent, it's only from 2005. And the reason we chose concrete and not stainless steel is because concrete is actually porous, so that it lets the air in and out, just like oak does. So it's going to be a lot more gentle for the wine. It allows the wine to breathe.
Yes. So you find that these are better than the wooden?
They're different. Both oak and concrete are good. They're definitely better than stainless steel though.
And you're producing a wine in here and here, you're blending it together?
Exactly. We blend everything together at the end. Because oak fermentation in oak between 13 and 15 degrees all year round. So it's really good for aging wine. And you can see on the walls we have mold, but it's actually penicillin. So it starts off being white. And it's because of the evaporation. Here, we have bottles for every vintage since 1942. So the interest of a cellar like this is really to leave a trace for future generations of how we make wine. Pretty much our archives. The more evaporation you have, the more the level goes down, and the more risk of oxidation you have. So what we do is to open up all the bottles of a vintage, sacrifice one to top up all the others, change the cork, and then it comes back here. And that really keeps the aging slow and steady.
Every 25 years?
20 to 25 years.
20 to 25, okay.
Unload the whole bunches here, on this first sorting table. So then you can imagine we have 4 people on each side who will eliminate any of the bunches which are either too ripe or not ripe enough. But especially here, get rid of all the nasty bits you don't want in your wine, like leaves, stones, spiders, snails, all of these. Get rid of them. And then the bunches just move forward into the deep center. So here, quite simply, that's where we separate the actual grape from the stem on which it is. So you can see inside we have like a claw that will turn in one direction to catch the stem, and the basket on the outside turns the other way, and that's how the grapes can come out through the holes. Yeah. And then the grapes will fall down here on a second sorting table. And this one heat will vibrate in order to spread out the grapes completely evenly. And then we will have 3 people on each side who will eliminate any of the actual grapes which wouldn't have reached full maturity. Because if you look at what a bunch of grapes looks like, you always have some in the center which are hidden by the others, so they haven't seen as much sun. So they're still a bit pink or even green, very acid, and that's why we get rid of them. And then once we're sure that we have only the best grapes, they go here through what we call the crusher. Again, the machine that replaces what we used to do by stepping on the grapes. So if you have a look on top, you'll see the mechanism, quite simple. We have 2 cylinders with a slight gap in between. And that gap is actually very important, because inside the grape there is a seed. That seed is an oil, which is very bitter, which we don't want in the wine. So the gap avoids crushing the seed. So when the cylinders turn towards each other, they just break open the skin of the grape, and that's it. And it's afterwards quite simply by forming by gravity, one on top of the others, that the grapes can crush themselves with their own weight.